Hello, I'm Anna Zaros, Head of Donor Engagement at the Center for Victims of Torture. Next week is our first ever virtual Restoring Hope breakfast. We've all been working hard to make sure you leave the breakfast feeling inspired and full of hope. I can't wait to see you. Now, for the past several weeks, we've been sharing with you some moments of hope. Curt Goering, Executive Director of the Center for Victims of Torture, has been interviewing some of our staff on the front lines of healing and human rights. You learned about some of what you've made possible this past year. Our expansion to the southern border, where thousands of asylum seekers wait in dangerous conditions and are in desperate need of healing care. Our new program supporting human rights activists forced into exile, and the quick transition to teletherapy with the onset of COVID-19. Now the tables have turned, and we're interviewing Curt to share with you his dreams and vision for the future of the Center for Victims of Torture. So Curt, can you tell us, what are some of the dreams you have for CVT?
Well, Anna, this might seem strange, but my dream for CVT, for the future of CVT, is that it goes out of business, that the reasons for its existence no longer require it to exist, because torture will have been eradicated, because there are no more victims, and therefore there's not a need for specialized care for survivors. But in the meantime, as long as torture is rampant, as long as it's its own pandemic and torture is still used by 3/4 of the world's governments, survivors will need specialized care. And that care is not only a need, it's a fundamental basic human right, the right to rehabilitation. And because that need is so large, CVT should further expand and provide care to more survivors who need that care and do it in more places. I dream of a future where every survivor who needs care, wherever they are, will be able to access this care. That could be a CVT clinic, that could be a partner organization providing high quality care. As long as CVT is needed, survivors across the world need to know that they have a place at CVT. CVT should be known across the world as a place where survivors can receive the rehabilitative care that they need. When a torture survivor escapes their country and needs care, they need to know that their next stop is CVT, where they will be welcome and receive the care that they need.
Thank you, Curt. That is a powerful vision. What are some of the priorities with support from all those folks showing up at the breakfast next week? What are some of the priorities you have for the organization the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, and in addition to expanding our direct services work, which we have been doing in recent years, but we want to continue, CVT's policy advocacy work also needs to be further strengthened. We have seen the global disregard, the backsliding on human rights protections in many countries. What was only a few years thought unthinkable, that policies of torture would be advocated for at the highest levels and practiced by the US government, became a reality. And there still has not been a comprehensive investigation into US torture post 9/11. Those responsible still have not been held accountable. And the victims of torture still have not been compensated for the brutality that was inflicted on them. That is what the Convention Against Torture requires. That's what US law requires. And this is not a Republican or a Democratic issue. Also, in the last 4 years, we've seen a systematic dismantling of the refugee protection system that had been so painstakingly built over the past 50 years, where people fleeing torture, persecution, are guaranteed protection. That system has been eviscerated. Here in the US today, very few asylum seekers receive the protections they so desperately need. And that system needs to be rebuilt. And finally, speaking of domestic human rights, my hope is that CVT can strengthen its work against human rights violations in the US, including providing specialized care to survivors of torture by law enforcement officers.
Thank you. That's a lot of good work to be done. So, if there's one thing you want people to know before the Restoring Hope breakfast, what would you tell them?
Anna, there is something that every single person can do. Every single person watching this right now or attending the breakfast that they can do. They can donate. They can contact their elected representatives on matters relating to torture or torture survivor rehabilitation. And a little effort can go a long way. So please do what you can. Every bit of it will directly help a survivor regain hope. Every bit will help a survivor tap into the resiliency they have within them. Every bit will help a survivor rebuild their life.
Thank you so much, Curt, for sharing with us your vision and the way that all of us can be a part of it. And thank you, each of you signed up, committed to joining us for the Restoring Hope breakfast. I know you signed up because you share our dreams too. Healing for all survivors of torture and an end to torture worldwide. October 7th is all about making that vision real. You make that healing and hope possible. So we'll see you next week.